Welcome to all my subscribers. This will be a nice little short video today because I'm just talking about one simple thing. Not like all the other times where my videos end up being long. So have no fear, this will indeed be a short video. So what we're going to look at today is Antiochus. Okay, or Antiochus, whatever his name might be pronounced as. If you were to scour, all available knowledge and information that's out there, published knowledge, history, scholarly opinion, church opinion, people's opinion, the vast majority of people think that it was Antiochus who put the abomination on the Temple Mount. And also, diverging from this aspect, a lot of people think that end days Antichrist will do similar. But nonetheless, focusing on one thing for this video, Antiochus. The majority of people actually say that it was Antiochus who put the abomination on the Temple Mount. Now, you hear this anywhere you look. In fact, if you go to Wikipedia, the Wikipedia article on the Abomination of Desolation, which is just one page long, it has its own section on Antiochus because it's that popular of a belief. Okay, and just, keeping it separate from an end days Antichrist possibly doing the same. I don't believe that as of our current year there is an end days Antichrist. I believe Islam was the fourth beast. Their founding prophet was the Antichrist. And there are many Antichrists, right? As Jesus said. But I'm not here to talk about all that. I'm here to focus on Antiochus. Okay? I believe the Abomination of Desolation was the Dome of the Rock, as seen in the photo for the video, which was built on the Temple Mount in 688 AD. Okay? But was it really Antiochus? Am I wrong? Are others wrong who believe it's the Dome of the Rock? Could it be Antiochus? Now, why do we say that? Because the abomination, we all commonly believe, is something that would be put on or built on or erected upon the Temple Mount. This is what is commonly held as belief, irregardless of what the verses actually say. That's just what everybody holds fast as a belief. So what people commonly do is they look in history. I'm not saying this is wrong, but people commonly look in history and try to see, okay, what big major things occurred on the Temple Mount? Like what was built there, what was put there that shouldn't be there. So for some reason, everybody, even scholars and churches and everybody from all angles of life seem to ignore the reality that they don't even acknowledge that Islam conquered and overthrew Israel. It's like that didn't even happen. They always focus on 70 AD when Rome did it. And everybody, historians, scholars, churches, everybody seems to ignore that, Islam ruled over Israel for 1260 years and some more. And Rome only ruled over for a couple hundred years. Right? Everybody seems to ignore that for some reason, and I will never understand why. And likewise with the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount. This is the biggest, baddest thing ever put on the Temple Mount. But, once again, everybody disregards it. They don't even consider it. Everybody collectively seems to look at Antiochus. And whilst Antiochus did not build a giant temple, Dome of the Rock, to a foreign deity, an unknown god, Antiochus just built a statue in the temple. What is it that makes people believe that Antiochus is the one who put the abomination there? Well, Antiochus put a statue of Zeus allegedly in the temple. And he did some, debauchery, some bad things, and made the Jews break certain Jewish law and this and that there, and forced them to partake in forbidden things like swine sacrifice and this and that there. But despite all of that, that's pale in comparison to what Islam did. Right? Islam, yes, Rome conquered and overthrew Israel in 70 AD. Yes, that's correct. And they destroyed the temple. Yes, that's correct. Now, Islam conquered, overthrew Israel. The temple had already been destroyed, but they wiped out the remnants and then built a whole new temple to a foreign and bad deity. Okay? That's You can't even, when you're looking at the two things that did verifiably occur in history, Dome of the Rock and the statue of Zeus, these two things don't even compare. It's like comparing a grain of sand to a mountain. I don't even see how they can compare. Um, but most importantly, and this is what's so beautiful, sorry, this is what's so beautiful, just simple common sense explains everything. Because don't know facts and facts about history, it's easy to make assumptions. What flabbergasts me is how the scholars still get it wrong and think it was Antiochus. It's probably because the scholars aren't religious. That's why. So the scholars aren't looking back in history with any religious intent. They don't believe in the Bible to start with. So they just go by Antiochus. But what gets me as well is that religious people who are religiously inclined, they just can't be bothered. They're too lazy to do the historical research and analyze all possible candidates and compare all possible candidates. I mean, when you do, whether you're a scholar or an average person, it's plain as day that the Dome of the Rock is a far better contender than the statue of Zeus, erected by Antiochus. But like I said, common sense is the best thing. Most people, scholars know this, but the average person doesn't know when Antiochus even lived. Okay? Now, there's one major problem here. Antiochus lived around 175 BC. Okay, that's when he was doing his thing, in 175 BC. You know what the major problem is? Is everybody's so quick to say it was Antiochus who built the abomination. Antiochus who built the abomination. We have one major problem. Antiochus wasn't even a Roman. Antiochus wasn't even a Greek. He's not even of any of the beast empires named or specified in the book of Daniel. He was from the Seleucid Empire, however you pronounce it. Seleucid or Seleucid, whatever. Right? That's what empire he was from. He's not even Roman. Like, I always assumed growing up he was Roman. I think everybody just assumes he was Roman. Right? And it was part of Rome that came in at. Nobody, the average person doesn't even know when Antiochus lived or anything really about him. The fact is, Antiochus lived before the kingdom of Grecia even fell. Now, Daniel spoke about the kingdom of Grecia, named it by name, and detailed when it would fall in relation to other nearby events. Now, we know from history that Grecia as a kingdom fell to Rome in 145 or 154 BC. Now, this was decades after Antiochus. So Antiochus was not Greek, he was not Roman, and he died before the kingdom of Grecia even fell. Why am I mentioning all this? Well, because Daniel makes it clear that the abomination of desolation is set up way after the kingdom of Grecia falls and splits into 4 sub-kingdoms subsequently. Daniel goes on through a whole chapter, I believe, a page or more of information and specific events that will transpire after the fall of Grecia, okay, and before or up until the 4th beast kingdom. Basically from the fall of Grecia onwards for a very long period of time. Okay, and in the midst of those pages, of scripture that Daniel is giving to us, somewhere in the middle of that, we see mention of strong ones will rise up out of this despicable king that's mentioned at that point in the scripture, and that these strong ones will rise up and set up the abominating desolation. Okay, so Daniel told us when the abomination would occur. He also told us later that it would occur in reference, to certain time periods. I'll get to that in a moment. But the striking thing that people don't know is they don't know enough about Antiochus. He lived before Grecia even fell. Daniel was the one who told us about the abomination, and he clearly told us in more than one place that it would happen long after the fall of Grecia. So that one factoid alone rules out Antiochus. Okay? The reason why scholars don't pick up on this is because they're not religious, they don't trust the scripture, they don't care, they're just looking at history. Okay? That's it. They look at the Dome of the Rock and think, oh, that's too far off, the Bible's not real, none of it's prophecy anyway, it's all just a bunch of nonsensical imaginary fluff. This is how scholars look at it. You know what I mean? Anyways, so Antiochus is excluded because of when he existed, right? And he wasn't even Roman or Greek to start with. And what he did do, putting the statue of Zeus in the temple and making the Jews, do these things, breaking the Jewish law, whilst that might be bad and evil and all of that there, um, although I don't think eating pork is necessarily that evil. I mean, whatever else, I'm not going to fuss. If you're Jewish, it's a big deal, right? But everything he did is pale in comparison to Islam conquering, overthrowing Israel, building the Dome of the Rock to a foreign deity, a temple to a foreign deity that oppresses Jews and Christians. I mean, that opposes Jews and Christians violently. I mean, it's just, there's no comparison whatsoever. But the cherry on top for this argument is stuff that comes out of Jesus' mouth, because Jesus himself, looking in the New Testament now, right? Not only did Daniel in the Old Testament say that the abomination of desolation would be set up long after the fall of Grecia, but Jesus told us when he was referencing verbatim Daniel's prophecies, okay, in Matthew 24 and in Mark 13, Jesus says the following, and this again shows the vast length of time that will be transpiring before the abomination will be set up. He says, but he who did endure to the end, he shall be saved. And this good news of the reign shall be proclaimed in all the world. So we're going to have all of this transpire before the abomination even is set up, right? And this good news of the reign shall be proclaimed in all the world for a testimony to all the nations, and then shall the end arrive. Whenever therefore ye may see the abomination of the desolation that was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, and if you look up the term holy place and it's used biblically, it is only used to describe the Temple Mount. Period. People don't know because they're not educated enough. They imagine they think they know what it means, but that is actually its biblical usage. It's the Temple Mount. So Jesus is referring verbatim to Daniel's prophecies, and he says that the abomination, Jesus clarifies the abomination is something built on the Temple Mount. We know from history the only things built upon the Temple Mount are a few Greek or Roman type statues. We got Antiochus' statue. I think Nero tried, or Caligula, one of the two, tried to put a statue of himself in the temple, but at the last minute they backed out. But the only other options are the Dome of the Rock, which is like, that trumps everything else as a viable candidate for the abomination, right? So looking at history, that's what we see. But Jesus says that Daniel was referring to something built upon the Temple Mount. But notice the words, how Jesus says this. He says, whenever, therefore, ye may see the abomination. That is Jesus in approximately 2030 BC, 20-something AD is when Jesus was on the earth. And Jesus is telling people at that point, this point here is how many hundreds of years after Antiochus? Antiochus died, I think, 164 BC. So we're talking about 200 years after Antiochus died. We have Jesus saying that in the future, you're going to see the abomination built on the Temple Mount. So how could anybody, religious or a scholar, in their right mind think that Antiochus is a viable candidate? He's absolutely not. He was never up for consideration, only in the minds of deluded persons. It would never was Antiochus, not even as a potential candidate. It just never was. Jesus clearly says in 20-something AD, speaking forward into the future, that whenever you may see the abomination of the desolation that was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, whoever is reading, let him observe, then those in Judea, let them flee to the mountains, and so forth, and so forth. And Jesus mentions how this will be called a tribulation. There shall be then great tribulation. So if we go over to Mark 13, we see the same thing again. It says in verse 10, and to all the nations it behooveth first that the good news be proclaimed, and when they may lead you, delivering up, be not anxious beforehand what ye may speak, so forth, so forth. Brother shall deliver brother up to death, so forth. Verse 13, and ye shall be hated by all because of my name, but he who has endured to the end, he shall be saved. And when ye may see the abomination of the desolation that was spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing where it ought not, whoever is reading, let him understand. Then those in Judea, let them flee to the mountains. So we see the same thing essentially in parallel. Okay, so Jesus has verbatim referred to the prophecy of Daniel twice. He's made it abundantly clear. I don't need to fluff it out any further. The abomination is something built on the Temple Mount after the lifetime of Jesus. After the lifetime of Jesus. Antiochus was 200 years before Jesus. Antiochus is impossible to be an option. It is not Antiochus. Okay? Antiochus. Now, we could only speculate and argue over what could then be the abomination, right? So, let's see. After Jesus's life, or during to after Jesus's lifetime, what other candidates do we have? We have a few Roman type statues put in the temple. Okay, how about we compare that to the temple remnants being wiped away by Islam and a huge temple to a foreign deity, Allah, and that deity commanded that the entire Bible be rewritten, the Jewish law, the Christian law be rewritten. That deity commanded in its Quran that the baptism doesn't exist, the Holy Spirit is a lie, that Jesus never died, that Jesus never resurrected, that Jesus wasn't the Son of God. Literally commands all this. And then going around enslaving, genociding Jews and Christians out of the land, forced religious conversions, conquering every nearby territory until they had the largest global empire that the planet has ever seen before Christianity. Okay? When you compare a few statues of Zeus or whatever in the Jewish temple, that does not compare to what I just described. It does not compare. And nobody in their right mind would ever think, oh, maybe you're wrong. No, it does not compare. The fact is, let's look at one factoid. In the case of the Dome of the Rock, where is the Jewish temple? Oh, that's right, there is not one there. What is there instead? Oh, an Islamic temple. Okay. In the case of these Roman statues that were built in the Jewish temple, is there a Jewish temple there at the time? Yes, actually, there is the Jewish temple there, and then a Roman statue or Greek statue was put inside of the Jewish temple. So let's compare the two. Think analytically. Let's look at this. We have a standing Jewish temple with a Roman statue inside of it. Or we have, as the second option, the, Jewish temple is gone. There isn't one there at all. And there is a temple to a foreign deity. Which is worse? A statue of a foreign deity in the existing Jewish temple, or no Jewish temple, it's wiped away, the land, the people have been conquered and subverted, and temple to a foreign deity. It's not really a difficult choice to make. It's common sense. Anybody with a right thinking mind would have to agree that, yep, the abomination of desolation, without a doubt, was the Dome of the Rock. And when you factor that in with the fact that Daniel said that there would be 10 kings to this fourth beast kingdom, which was Islam, and it was the 10th king of Islam that built the Dome of the Rock, and Daniel said that after this point that there would be a measure of 1260 years given into the hand of the 11th king of said kingdom. And we know that from the Dome of the Rock, as Islam records in their own records, in 688 AD being officiated, from 688 AD, 1260 years forward, we come to the precise year that Islam lost its dominion and empire over Israel in 1948, when they had to give the land back to Jews and Christians, and Israel was reborn. So we see history in perfect agreement with religion, religious prophecy. The exact number that Daniel gave, 1260 years, was fulfilled from the Dome of the Rock until the rebirth of Israel. The Dome of the Rock marked where Islam had conquered and overthrown Israel and subjugated it, and the people had gone into the final phase of exile. And then, for 1260 years, they literally ruled it. And then, the period of exile and dominion ended in 1948, and that's when you had an influx of Jews and Christians returning from exile back to Israel. And hence, we have the millions and millions and tens of millions of Jews and Christians that live there today because of that. That is a direct, utter fulfillment of Daniel's prophecy, a perfect combination of history and the Bible. But not only that, but Daniel also specified that we would have 1290 years from the erection of the abomination spanning until when the temple sacrifices were removed. Now, the temple sacrifices were removed numerous times throughout history, but the first and foremost time that it occurred, which the Bible actually spends chapters detailing in great detail, was when Babylon, truly speaking Neo-Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar, they overthrew the Jewish temple. They began their 18-year onslaught against Israel, but in the year 602 BC is when they desecrated the temple, and as the Bible records, they took all the gold instrumentation, the implements and everything out of the temple, disrupted the sacrifices, caused the sacrifices to stop. That was historically confirmed, biblically confirmed, 602 BC, precisely 1290 years from when the Dome of the Rock was erected on the Temple Mount. So we have the Dome of the Rock fixated as a timepiece, like as a piece of time on the timeline, fixated, concreted, with 1260 years going forward, fixing it in place, and then 1290 year span going backwards in time, fixing it in place. It is concreted in place. There is no mathematical room for argument. Absolutely none. The Dome of the Rock is, and always was, the abomination of desolation. In fact, ancient scholars, in ancient times, once it was erected on the Temple Mount, considered it to be very just that, the abomination of desolation that Daniel warned about. Okay, so at the end of the day, folks, I proved my point. It is not, cannot be, never was Antiochus, not even for a millisecond. It always was the Dome of the Rock, but for some spooky, bizarre reason, everybody, scholars, Christians, everybody on the earth, just don't even consider Islam. They just don't even consider it to be the fourth beast. They don't consider that prophet was the false prophet, the lamb-like beast, the worker of false miracles that made the world bow before Islam. It's like people don't want to see that. They don't see the exile of the enslavement and the subjugation and the empire of Islam over Israel for 1260 years. They just don't see it. I mean, do people not know that Islam conquered Israel in 639 or whatever it was AD? Do people not know that? And I hope I didn't mix up my BCs and ADs, but everybody, the right thinking mind will know where I did make a mistake, if I did, because it's quite obvious. But anyways, right? So this is all food for thought. People need to take this seriously. I think the reason why everybody's been so ignorant to this blatant reality is because Satan has blinded them. Satan has absolutely pulled the wool over everybody's eyes, blinded them, and made them incapable. And the only way you could see through that thick wool blindfold is by getting up off your lazy butt and going out and doing the study and the historical research yourself. It took me probably 5+ years, maybe 10 years to crack the prophecy of Daniel, maybe more. I mean, it was ridiculous. I literally had times, over years and years and years, it came to a few points where I got so fed up, it almost made me lose my faith, because then I thought, if this prophecy is wrong and it's just bogus bunk nonsense numbers, then the whole Bible is just wrong. And there were times where I so badly kept pushing and pushing and pushing, but I ended up throwing my study book across the room because the numbers just wouldn't work. And then the more I got off my lazy butt and researched in history and then learned about Islam, everything started to fit together. Because nobody's talking about that. Because if that is Satan's kingdom, then he's done a very good job at sweeping it under the rug and hiding it from everybody. Under the guise of what? How does it hide so well? Under a lamb-like guise. Lamb-like. Oh, but we believe in Jesus. This is what Islam says. We believe in the same God as you. Right? They believe in the same God as us, they say, but yet they had to conquer Israel. How about that one? And rewrite the Bible, but they believe in the same God as us. You see what I mean? So anyways, folks, it's all food for thought. It's been right in front of our eyes this whole time. And what this shows us is there's only 75 years remaining according to God. He told Daniel it'd be 75 more years after the 1260th year. That was 1948 plus 75 is 2023. So Satan's done a good job at keeping his kingdom hidden, so to speak. It's right in front of our eyes, but hidden. Why and how? Satan made everybody blind. How do you make everybody blind? If it's so obvious, by keeping our eyes and interests out of the history books, out of the religious books, by keeping us lazy, the people, not me, but by keeping the people lazy, he made everybody, unable to learn. And he did a really good job of it. That's all I could say. He did a really good job because, 2023 is next year. And if next year is the end, then he did an excellent job of keeping it quiet. Because you could go out there right now and search the internet high and low. You will barely find a single soul out there talking about the things that I'm talking about. You could count it on one hand, if that. Nobody's talking about any of these related things. Nobody. Every single person is absolutely clueless to Daniel's prophecy, how it was fulfilled, and how close to the immediate end we are. Everybody is absolutely clueless. Satan fooled everybody so well, that the way he fools everybody else, non-Christians and everybody else in the ways that he does anyways, right? But he fooled the Christians so well that the end day is right around the corner, and they don't even know it. But they had been given the calculations by God, who told us to calculate it 2,500 years ago, and now it's next year, potentially the end is, and I'm like the only person on the planet who seemed to have cracked this altogether, and the only one talking about it, at least, right? You could count on one hand. I've spent years trying to find other people talking about this. It doesn't exist. There's like one or two people on some random websites. There's no organizations. There's no churches. There's not even synagogues, because you don't even have to be Christian for this, what I'm talking about here. This still complies with Judaism, right? Because it's the book of Daniel. You don't have to mention the things Jesus said. The book of Daniel laid out the mathematics, right? Satan really duped everybody. He really, really did. So you all better wake up really, really quickly. We had 2,500 years to study this over, and look how bad mankind did. God forbid that I'm right, and the end is next year. God forbid, and I'm saying that sarcastically, because I hope to hell that it does happen next year. So anyways, folks, God bless you all. Toodaloo.